IMHO Talk Show.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles.
Razor.
Yes, and we are still here, still standing, as always, taking Seville to the world and bringing the world to Seville. And you could be anywhere in the world, but you are here with us. So please tell a friend that is IMHO Talk Show live in effect right about now. And by popular demand, and I want to give a shout out.
He laughing already.
Popular demand.
No, we've been wanting you,
I don't know
Chief.
about that. We'll see. That's not the day.
Like we've been wanting to get this gentleman on for quite a while, and thanks to your team for working with us to making this happen, and I'm so glad that you obliged. None other than Police Chief Michael Kochis of the city of Charlottesville. Well, Chief, good Sunday afternoon to you. How you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. It's great to see you guys, and it's great to finally be on your show. I've been watching.
Thank you.
So yeah.
And you still came on here, huh?
Oh, come on, man. That's easy work.
Yeah. You must be a glutton for pain, huh?
Yeah.
No, that Tuesday.
Yeah. So first, just to catch the people up, because some folks just may not be as familiar with you. I know one of my first things that I saw you do when you came to town was that you actually opened up your office for one-on-ones. Community folks, leaders had the opportunity to come in, get to know you, like a meet and greet, and so like that was good to see. But for folks that don't know, just give us a little bit of your history on what led you here, with all that's going on the way when you would Google Charlottesville a couple years ago, what would pop up, right? Top of the searches. So let folks know, just real quick, your background and why you chose to be the police chief of Charlottesville.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, thank you. So I'm a native of Northern New Jersey. I grew up in Passaic County, right outside of Paterson, New Jersey. I joined the military when I was 18 and never went back. And, that I couldn't go back. I wasn't necessarily a great kid. So went to the military, and I believe the military saved my life, to be honest with you. Got out of the military, and I spent most of my career with the Alexandria, Virginia Police Department, where I retired as a commander. After I retired from the Alexandria Police Department, I was appointed to be the chief of police in the town of Warrenton, just a little bit north of here, and was there for 3 years as police chief. And as you stated, you Google Charlottesville police and all that was going on. It was a complicated time. I mean, if you got, and I often reflect on kind of what went down, everything. I mean, you can't go into Charlottesville and be the chief of police if you don't understand the impact of 2017, and not just August, but July and May, right? Like understand all of that. And then, you come out of that, and then you have a pandemic within 2 years. And I joke sometimes about, Charlottesville did real deal pandemic, and where in Warrenton we did it for like a day, right? But so we're as folks in the chief community, we were kind of watching stuff going on in Charlottesville because man, it was complicated, And so when the opportunity came up, I've already retired once. And so my wife thought I was crazy when I considered it because, like, what are we doing? When are we done with this policing stuff? But I felt I was still young, and I felt like I had something to offer. I went to grad school at UVA. And so what I saw from afar was a community that was begging to be involved in its police department. But, I mean, we, as a police department, we didn't – how can I say this? We made a lot of mistakes in the past. And so there was a huge trust deficit. And so I felt like, I think there's an opportunity here to really come in and try to make a difference. And so did that. And I've been here about a year and a half now, and been making some progress. It's a new challenge every day. I'll come in on Monday and something will happen and be like, all right, I guess we're doing this today, And
yeah.
And so I'm loving it though. I was telling my assistant the other day that I've never been more fulfilled in a job I have in 25 years than I am right now. And I just feel like we're making progress. We have an opportunity to do big things. And I love it. I love it every day. Moved into Charlottesville. My wife and I bought a house in 10th and Page neighborhood. That wasn't by design. People are like, Chief, I didn't really know anything about 10th Page neighborhood, and my wife found a house she really loved there. And I've got to tell you, the benefit of living in a community where you serve is huge. And in my 25 years, I've never lived in a community that I serve. Never. I always live. Most cops don't. They either can't afford to, and so to me.
So how important is that though? Let me ask, like, do you feel like that should be essential to know in the community, or is not a big deal if you live there or not?
It's huge. I mean, when my wife wakes up and says, "Hey, I heard gunshots last night," and it's not just it hit home. It's for real for me, right? Or when someone puts a note in my mailbox about drug dealing around the corner and I wonder what I'm doing about it and when am I going to do it? At like 1 a.m, I look on my camera and I can see they like drop this note in my mailbox, like they're mad, and then the organic conversations in the neighborhood, just from walking the dogs, just with my neighbors. And so,
I have to ask though, I have to ask that there, like when you say the people you see in your neighborhood and community, like what representation is that? Are we saying a diverse group of your neighbors? Are we saying black, white? Because
I live on 11th Street. No, everybody knows where I live.
Okay.
Right? I live right across the street from LMF. And so, yeah, it's a diverse community. Everyone knows 10th and Page is a very diverse community. We know that. And there's challenges right now. The whole conversation around upzoning. 10th and Page was at the center of that. What did that mean for us? It's and there are folks who have lived there their entire life. They own those homes. They're either passed down from their families, and then some of them, they're struggling to pay the taxes now.
Hey, Chief, I got a question for you real quick.
Yeah.
Thank you for what I feel like you're humanizing yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like you're talking to us like three men sitting here talking. So if you allow me to, I would love to humanize you to our listening audience as well, with your permission. Okay. Going back when you first came here, because I'm from like the Northern Orange, Culpeper area. So Warrenton is some place that I spent. I know you dealt with Turnbull and all, you know what I'm saying? So I know
Haytide community,
Haytide, all that, right? So let's come back to Charlottesville for a second. When you first came here, when I first met you, I'd cooked for the organization that I had.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that you came under scrutiny for was kind of opening your arms to the officers that Chief Brackney had felt that there was a problem to. If you don't mind, would you explain what you saw differently in those officers as compared to what Chief Brackney saw?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that I feel was important was for me to come in here with a clear head and not any preconceived notions. Understand what I really had within the organization. You have to remember, I came in, we had 30 vacancies. I had like no command staff. I had no deputy. I mean, Tito was there as the interim chief. He was like a deputy chief, but then there was a question if he was even a deputy chief, was he a captain first and all that? Like I had no command staff, 30 vacancies. There were holes everywhere. And so the first thing I really needed to do was listen and get to know the organization, because if we're going to have a conversation in our community about policing and procedurally just policing, that's got to start inside. There's no way I can expect my staff to go out in the community and police this community in a way that they expect, with fairness, explaining the why, with process, right? They're not going to do that if they don't feel they're being treated the same way internally. And so, look, we're not perfect. I won't get into too many details about personnel matters because I don't think that's appropriate. But I will tell you, my first year, I terminated 3 officers, demoted a high-ranking person to rank a patrol officer. And guess what? Nobody knew about it. Because we're just going to do the work. And you know how many grievances were filed? None. And it's because folks knew who need to be there are going to be there, and folks know who they didn't need to be there are going to go. We just set the clear expectation early on in our organization. We set a clear mission, clear vision, clear values. And if they fall short, we're going to hold people accountable. But I also don't have to hit them over the head with a hammer, and I don't need to blast them publicly either. We need to fix what's wrong, and that's what we did. Look, I will tell you, I don't know Chief Brackney well, but we have some mutual friends. The Chief's world is small. And I'll say it to this day. There were a lot of things that Chief Brackney did within this organization. She did it that were really good. And I could go on and name. I mean, we're talking everything from our Fourth Amendment auditor to the different things she was trying to modernize our police department. But think about the time she was there, right? I mean, it was coming off of, you had Al Thomas that was just let go after 2017. Then you had an interim chief. I think he came from like Chesterfield. He was there for like a few weeks, went to a council meeting, literally came back to the office, says, I ain't doing this. I quit, left. Right. So there was a lot of instability. So then Chief Brackney came in, and within like a year, the pandemic hit.
Right.
And then you had all kinds of other stuff kind of going on. So she was working in a really tough environment, in a tough space. And so when I came in, that instability was still there. But I think the benefit I had was that, one, we were coming out of the pandemic. We had a new city council that have really focused on governing. And they're really trying hard to govern. And what is govern? You know, people want their potholes fixed, sidewalks fixed, roads paved. I mean, they want to feel safe. I mean, the basic function of government, right? So,
but police funding is a big part too, though. People do care about how much you fund police.
They do, yes, absolutely, and we could talk about that. I love talking about police funding.
We'll definitely get to that as well. But even Brackney's predecessor, before we go into stuff that happened during her time and your take on it, moving forward as the chief, her predecessor, former Chief Longo, like there has been scrutiny of even your relationship with Chief Longo, which they feel like, some of the public feels like, based on our listeners' comments, was that some of the things that Chief Brackney put in place was to correct what happened by her predecessor. So one question that our listener has is the relationship seems to be like that you all are in support of each other as far as you and Chief Longo, and so they're curious, like, why align yourself with Chief Longo, or like where do you differ, where do you align when it comes to how we're serving university in the city?
Yeah, so Chief Longo and I do get along really well, and I also get along well with Chief Reeves. I hold them both in very high regard. I also get along really well with Jeff Vogel. I consider Jeff a friend. But we don't agree on a whole lot. I mean, and we meet regularly. I think we have to get to a point where we can respect people and interact with people and talk with people, even if we don't agree with them. And so, in this job, I can't operate in a bubble. There are things that I do within the Charlottesville as a chief that a lot of people don't agree with. I will tell you, I'm on the executive board for Virginia Association of Chiefs. We have meetings and vote about legislation and all this stuff, and they're like, "Oh, here's Kochis again, that liberal progressive chief, Jesus." And so I get called all kinds of names. When I was in Warrenton, I was called this crazy liberal chief. I'm in Charlottesville, and I'm like this law and order guy. Like, I guess I'm doing it right then because I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't know.
I got a question for you. All right. When it comes to, I love the direction that you're taking it. And this wasn't a question of mine until you just said the things that you said about getting along and policing fairly and whatnot. Here in Charlottesville or across the nation, right, we tend to see that the African-American community has the largest population inside of the jails and prisons, but yet they are the smaller demographic of each one of those communities.
Yeah.
As a police chief, do you ever see that being a change from who the officers tend to, I don't want to say the word target, even though that's a word that could be used in this, but do you ever see there coming to a point where the communities that spend the most time inside of jails and prisons feel like the policing is fair?
Not until we start having frank conversations. Okay. Here's why I say that. There's a lot of studies out there that talk about disparities in policing. I've asked the Center for Police and Equity to do one. Now they're doing one as we speak for us in use of force data and traffic stop data. I've asked the Justice Department to come in to do an organizational assessment to look at what we do, processes, procedures, policing, all around that. Almost like a consent decree, except I've asked for them to come in and do it. They're a team of 6 of them that came in. They were here like 3 weeks ago. They met with Mr. Fogel. They met with Ms. Vizina Howard. Folks that are well regarded in our community, and to talk about these things. But one thing I've asked these organizations to do, or at least the Center for Policing Equity, I know disparities exist. You're not going to tell me anything I don't already know. I know disparities exist in traffic stops, use of force, arrests, just like you said, those who are incarcerated. What nobody can tell me is why they exist. Now, look, we can say, I suspect that answer is much more complex than just cops are all racist. Now, I think implicit bias plays a role. Absolutely it does. And that's something as a profession we need to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
But when we look at these studies, you go across all the studies say the same thing. I was just looking at one. Fairfax County paid all kinds of money to do from some university in Texas. They did it. Same thing. And at the end of it, they're like, but we can't say why they exist. And so that's what I want to know. I suspect the reason is more complex.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think that, at least the conversation that I'm privy to is that a lot of times that's why the defund movement kind of exists. Like people say that there's systematic issues, right? And to just police it is sort of being like retroactive, right? And where some of the funding should be going to preemptive measures. So right, whether that be food inequity or whether that be the educational system, people will say that that's what contributes to it.
So absolutely, I think you hit the nail on the head. So
hold on a second, Chief. Before y'all go any further, I ain't never been to college or nothing like it, but okay. It seems very simple to me. It's not even the every cop is racist, you know what I'm saying? Because I've been targeted by black officers and white officers. I think the problem is that the police don't look like the community. Mm-hmm. So if you are policing a predominantly Asian area, you need Asian police. If you're Caucasian, African American, whatever it is, right? Because the differences that you don't understand about that other culture will make you lean to your own understanding and decide what they're doing means to you. Mm-hmm. So I think if I was a person that could kind of decide, now you can't say who's going to come apply for a job because you can't hire who isn't applying, right? But at the same time, if 10th and Page has a community that looks like this, the officers need to match the community that they're policing, because what happens is you can have the best intentions in the world, but if every encounter that I had with a white person is either through court system, they're telling my parents that they can't live here because they're not married, or who's locking up my father, or I just don't have a good relationship with Caucasian people. The police officer with the best intentions is still going to be somebody that I fear and try to stay away from, even when I'm not doing anything.
Yeah. So Razor, that makes sense. But and I don't negate that, but that's still policing. Like, so what I wanted him to answer though was that I guess I was kind of answering his question, and when his rebuttal was that before we get to the policing, like there's systematic infrastructural local government stuff that needs to be fixed so that our kids don't end up in police custody. So you're talking about once they get to the police, but we want to prevent them from ever having to deal with the police.
So to your point, I'll often use an analogy of a goalie on a soccer field. If the ball gets to the goalie, many people on that field has failed. So who are the people on that field, right? So you got our mental health system that continue to fail our communities, especially our most communities, our most vulnerable communities, right? Mm-hmm. Substance abuse system. My God, in the city of Charlottesville, I was on a call the other day. We don't even have the closest inpatient clinic is like 60 miles away. Like, we just don't have those. So these systems that continue to fail our communities, and when they fail, guess what? The ball gets to us, and we're not good at that stuff, right? You talk about making sure our officers are reflective of the community. I agree 100%. So right now, almost a quarter of our workforce are African-American officers right now. Okay. So, and what is 18% of our community are African American, right? I believe that's the last census. But so we've made a huge strides in making sure we're hiring a diverse workforce. We sent our largest and most diverse police recruit class to the academy this past year. It was the first majority minority class we've ever sent to the academy. And so we are laser focused on, to that point exactly, that you're right. Folks have to see police wield so much power. And so folks they want to know you, right? We talk about procedurally just policing all the time. And I tell my officers, and it drives me nuts because I sound like the old guy in the room, like, I'll get out of your car and go talk to people, get to know their first name, know their kids, have a conversation. That's what people want. And they're growing up like looking on a damn phone. They want to sit in their car and look at TikToks all day. And so it's a challenge, but you're 100% right. The other piece when we talk about funding that I think gets missed out is our public defender offices in Virginia. They are not funded at the same level of our prosecutors' offices.
Right.
So think about who they're representing the most. There was legislation back in 2020 to ensure that there was matching funding. It did not pass. And so we really need to look at that. We need to look at restorative practices. I've been very clear, and I catch crap for it all the time, that while I am very very much in favor of restorative principles for most cases, for most types of crimes, except when you pick up a gun. When you pick up a gun, it is my opinion that it is no longer about you anymore. I do, I've been here a year and a half, and we do a community walk every week since I've been here. And the purpose of those is really to talk to folks in their space, on their front porch, in their living room, on the sidewalk, and hear real stories of what they expect of their police department. And overwhelmingly, they want more police. I have yet to hear a community that is disproportionately affected by violent crime say they want less police. They want better policing. They want the right type of policing, but they're sick. I mean, they show you bullet holes in their homes. I saw one the other day up on Harmon Drive that had 41 shots through their house, 7.6 rounds from an AK-47 going through them. And so when you pick up a firearm and you commit a crime, I'm sorry, it's not about you anymore.
Yeah. So police chief. So Chief Kochis, thank you for that. Let's take a pin in it. We're going to take a quick break just for the top of the hour. And we're going to come back and we're going to dive right into that when it comes to gun policies and what have you. So thank you. And family, still got plenty of time left with the chief. Yeah. So tell a friend to chime in. 1013 IMHO Talk Show. We'll be right back with none other than Seville Police Chief Kochis. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles.
Razor.
And we're here still with the Charlottesville Police Chief Michael Kochis. And when we went to break, we were answering the listeners' questions and comments concerning gun violence, and so the chief was expounding on some of the issues faced there. So Chief, where we wanted to go next with this topic in particular, it's a lot, as you can imagine. I think that's like the majority of a lot of the listener questions that we have received thus far. So let me see how I can sum this up the best. So when it comes to how there's resources in our area, particularly like when it comes to gun violence and whatnot, how would you like to engage, and how have you engaged when we think about Buck Squad, Peace in the Streets, groups such as that? How have you implemented them? And as far as the impact of that, and then we'll talk about sort of go more into the laws around the gun rights and stuff after that.
Yeah. It's a good question. I don't know if you remember that town hall I did at Trinity Church about like my third month in. Mm-hmm. It was packed. And if you remember around that time, we had like 4 homicides in 3 months. We were averaging a shooting a day. And I came out of that conversation thinking to myself, man, this community, they wants to be involved in solutions, right? They don't just expect the police to do it on their own. And so, we started doing the work, working with different nonprofits. And when I say working with, to be honest with you, they were already doing their work, right? They were just, and I can't quantify what has really helped in kind of addressing, and I'll talk about some numbers here in a second, but you wouldn't think when looking at, if you listen to social media, which I don't really do, but that crime is way down in the city, but it is, and I'll just throw some numbers out there, and I can't help but think it's because of groups like the Buck Squad, Uhuru, Peace in the Street. Well, Peace in the Street is part of Yuhubu, right?
Right.
And that's the whole of community approach to addressing this. I can't quantify that, right? Mm-hmm. But I can tell you, sure as hell ain't just the police department, right? But so this time last year, we had 5 homicides. This year, we've had 1. Last year, we had 40 aggravated assaults last year. This year, 29. 8 robberies last year, 6 now. Okay, so, I mean, you're seeing, and we're also seeing this time, compared to this time last year, gun violence cases are down 50%. Now, I'm going to present Monday night to City Council about some of these numbers, and that's huge. Now, numbers can change, right? You can do anything with data. It's going to just change. And I got to be very careful by running around spiking a football saying, wow, look at this progress we're making, because it doesn't mean anything to those families over on First Street, right, where they're having a shootout in front of their house last week. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Or these kids are running around just doing the OK Corral with each other, you know? And so, but it's important, I feel, to highlight those numbers and to highlight over the last year and a half what's been done. You know, this community, they've stepped up in a big way. So yeah, I mean, all these groups, look, like I said, we can't do it alone. We're, again, going back to that soccer field analogy, like we're just a goalie there, right? Like we're left holding the ball. But if you want to solve these crimes, you want to solve these issues, talking about crime, and obviously the root cause of crime is poverty. I think everybody knows that. And so how do we address the complex issues of poverty? And that gets into the conversation around housing and, you know, and mental health and healthcare and all of those things. I mean, the Surgeon General just issued a public health crisis.
But Chief, that's one of those things. You know, I've been around you long enough. I feel like you and I can talk openly.
Yeah, absolutely.
That seems like one of those answers that is a polished answer. If I'm a police officer and I went to go get training, and these other organizations, because a lot of those people at the organization are my friends, so they know where my heart is when I'm saying this. And you are a nonprofit organization and you want to be out here helping with gun violence or helping with reentry or your mission has changed along the way, right?
Yeah.
As a police officer, not the chief, but as a police officer, do I feel that these organizations are in the way? Do I really feel that you are qualified? I went through this training to say that I can de-escalate a situation. You tell me that you are qualified to do it because you may have been one of the people that I used to arrest, but now you don't look at it that way. So you feel the community trusts you more. And I don't want you to answer for every officer, but it just seems kind of unbelievable to me that the officers would trust the community enough to face these situations that at times it seems like y'all are chasing like a dog chasing its tail, because something can happen and we can't solve that murder for a long time unless they end up killing both each other at the same time. You know, we find people coming in from Baltimore, from other organizations coming to the city of Charlottesville, causing all this drama. So then in the midst of it, you have to tiptoe around to make sure nobody gets offended because you really don't feel that the other organizations are really adding value to the solving of it. Like, I know
where you're going. Look, we can talk. So look,
as an ex-criminal, right?
Listen, I haven't always been a chief. Okay. I mean, I was a street cop for many years. I was an ARC. I did all that stuff. Right. And so, and I would tell you, we did not have a lot of those groups in Alexandria when I was on the street. And if we did, I'd probably feel the way that you're talking about. And I would argue probably some of my officers do feel that way.
Okay.
Right? And so, but, you know, they're so like, you know, this is what in front of me. I go to a call. This is how I handle the call. This is what I got to do. And what we're trying to do is, and we have brought in folks to do training for our officers on different things, whether it's procedurally just training. Brian Williams from UVA, Professor Williams, he comes in and teaches about Charlottesville. Policing in Charlottesville is unique. It's different than other places, right? Mm-hmm. So, and understanding those things. So we're working hard internally to make sure our officers value the importance of community for a lot of reasons. And like, so we try to put it to them. So you're not going to be able to solve this crime unless somebody there's all these witnesses saw it. If they don't trust you, they ain't gonna tell you shit. I'm sorry.
Right. No, you good.
But they're not gonna tell you stuff, right? And so, so yes, to your point, I think you would find some officers that are like, you know what? Oh, the Buck Squad, they might not be helpful, or the Uhuru, they might not even know what that is, or this group or that group, or like City of Promise, they may not even have ever talked to someone from City of Promise. Mm-hmm. But together, these organizations are really trying hard, right? And so they do good work. Are they perfect? No, just like the police department's not perfect. We ain't perfect either. And so we.
But what do you do if your people don't have the buy-in?
What's that?
That's my question. If your people don't have the buy-in, I'm not talking about the interview question that you give us, right? Because I might say, yeah, the chief, yeah, me and him hit it off. But then if the officers don't believe in that, because they're human, right? And they want to go home to their families as well. And if they feel like anything is preventing them from doing the best that they can do, it would be kind of hard for me to believe that you can speak for them to have the buy-in.
Yeah, so it comes down to trust, right? They got to trust them, right? So in order to have trust, you got to build relationships. In order to build relationships, you got to be present. And so it starts with being present out there. And so here's been the challenge for us as a police department for a while now. It was staffing, right? So like I said, this time last year we had 30 vacancies. Today we have 4. What is that? We're in the people business. So what does that allow us to do? It allows us to get out there and not just engage with the community during emergencies. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's what was happening for a long time. And we stopped responding to all kinds of other calls. We officers didn't have time to get out and engage with the community and get to know people and do things. So we're working on that. It is a process.
Okay.
So yeah, no, you're right. I don't live in some la land. I know. I mean, cops can be an interesting bunch,
Okay.
So Chief, thank you for that. And so what I'm curious about, and some of our listeners are curious about, is when you show sort of results of the decline of crimes, like what is the reason for that, right? And I know that may sound like a layman question, but it's kind of deep if you think about it, right? Because over incarceration has always been a big part when it comes to communities of color. So, so before we get deeper into that though, like when you look at the resources for like for resources like Buck Squad, Peace in the Streets, or let's take it further, mental health services and other services that we know that are preemptive before life leads to a life of crime, so to speak. So we kind of mentioned defunding earlier, but let's get back to that. Right. So when you think about the funding, and as you said, police can't do it all. Police shouldn't be expected to be the end all be all for community service. Like when it comes to whatever people may need, like once they get confronted by the police. Right. Yep. So that's my question. How do you think the funding could be better distributed, maybe, or even what resource would you tell our local government, even if we had to find other tax dollars? Like what is it? Mental health services, supporting these community resources like Stop the Violence movements, like what is it that the officers need funded?
Yeah. So funding for within the police department, I could tell you, I haven't seen them defunding our police department. What they've done over the years now, in 2016, we had 126 sworn strength allocated. Today we have 111 sworn strength allocated. Because of the vacancies, they have reduced them, right? And now, as we're being asked to do more, there are challenges with that, and so that's a conversation. But to your point, I think we do need to be investing, and I do think the city is. The city has the Vibrant Community Fund. That I'll be honest with you, I've worked, in 2 other jurisdictions here, and while both of them do outside agency funding and help nonprofits, the city of Charlottesville by far has done the most I've ever seen.
When it comes to that, Chief, I don't know what to call this, but the program where they're going to start like reading the license plates, right?
Yeah,
I was up in the Flock. I was up in the Baltimore area, and I saw how like they used to have blue light districts and stuff like that, right? So when you come into certain areas, certain things are put into place to try to add to safety, right? When it comes to implementing something like that in the city of Charlottesville, how do you propose, like you, the person, not trying to check the boxes and make everybody happy and not have everybody protest against you? you, the person, how do you see that working to the benefit of the city of Charlottesville?
Yeah, so it's an investigative tool. It's just a tool. And I've been very clear. I said it at city council. This isn't a silver bullet. You don't put flock cameras up and the crime goes away, right? It is a tool of many things that the police department can use. And I say that because what we're seeing is a direct correlation between stolen vehicles and shootings, right? And so the LPRs, the idea is let's say if we're using cars for these things, then let's look at this solution that other jurisdictions are using. I mean, Norfolk has like 170 of them or something crazy like that. We're only looking to do 10, but it's shown it'll help us solve crimes in a way that we don't have right now. And I'll give you an example. We had the homicide up on Elliewood. And when that happened, a description was put out of a silver 4-door sedan at like 1 a.m. If we had that system, that information could be put into that flock system, and then any silver 4-door sedan that would have went through one of those cameras, it sends it live to the officers. So it would allow us to try to apprehend somebody much quicker. Now, you bring up a good point about implementing something like that. Charlottesville is a unique place, right? Folks are. This is an engaged community. And so when we put something like that into place, it's going to be different than other places. Most places retain the data for 30 days, right? That's what most places retain it for. I recommended we only retain it for 7 days, all right, which is going to be the lowest in the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. And to be honest with you, in most of the country, there's only a few places that do 7 or maybe even less, but for the most part, it's 30 days. And I'll be honest with you, my recommendation to go that low didn't sit well with my peers throughout the state, because in the General Assembly, they're going to be studying these cameras next year during the crime commission. And they're afraid they're going to use Charlottesville as an example and say, hey, 7 days is working. You don't need that data for 30 days. That ain't my problem, right? I have to answer to the folks of the city of Charlottesville. So, but again, it's just a tool. It's an investigative tool that is shown to be very effective, and there needs to be oversight measures. The executive director of the PCOB will be able to audit it. It'll be audited. If it's misused, that's a crime. The Commonwealth Attorney has been very clear that if it's misuse, that the officer could be charged with Class 1 misdemeanor for computer trespass. So there are safeguards in place, and we will be putting out there a transparency portal where people can see where they are. It's not a secret. It's not a secret thing. So there's a lot that's gone into that. I can't hear you. You there? I can't. Now I got you.
You got me? Okay. Y'all are union now, right?
The officers are, yes.
Okay. Wait a minute. Break that down to me, because it sounded like you did a separation between the officers and yourself.
Yeah, I'm not in the union. I'm at will. I mean, they can fire me whenever they want.
Okay. Now, speaking on that, when I come from the union, Local 26 out of DC, I was an electrical union, so I understand how they work.
My son's an electrician.
Okay. You have the PCOB, you have your own internal investigation, and now you have unions that believe in arbitration, right?
Correct. Yeah.
How is that going to hold up when, like, y'all are investigating a complaint, when you have so many different layers that you have to sift through before you actually get an answer? Do you think, in your personal opinion, that it is going to be more of a cluster, or do you feel that it's going to be something that really signifies and gets the community the answers that they're looking for once the complaint has been made?
Yeah, so I don't have a problem with it, and I'll tell you why. So I was union president in Alexandria for many years, and then as a commander, I was the commander's union president. So I know how unions work pretty well. And I can tell you, nobody wants a bad cop out of that building more than a good cop. Mm-hmm. And so, but I think process matters. We were having that conversation earlier about procedural justice, right? Mm-hmm. So our folks have to know they're going to be treated fairly, but that doesn't mean they're not going to be held accountable. And so we actually created a professional standards division. It didn't exist before I got here. We added a captain, and within that professional standards divisions, internal investigations, training, and recruiting. And so why that's important is we've aligned our training section and our recruiting section with internal affairs. Okay. It's because when you do an internal affairs investigation, you identify training needs and you identify people we probably shouldn't have hired. And so to have them all in one space has been really beneficial, and it's allowed us to identify training needs, identify hiring needs. Look, the internal affairs process is robust, and it's always been robust, and I think where we run into challenges and we talked about this earlier, they're very private because they're personnel matters. And while any other profession, everyone understands that, in policing, it makes people nervous. And so the benefit of having a police civilian oversight board is that the executive director can see all of it. She can audit any internal affairs file. She has full access to our body cam stuff. And so if she gets a question as she's reviewing an internal affairs, like, hey, I don't think they handled this correctly. Here it is. She could look at all of it. Now,
and that was just recent
details.
And that was just recent to where they re-implemented that, right? Because
there were some issues with the ordinance that in the ordinance it required an info sharing agreement. And so back to your point about process, right? The ordinance required an info sharing agreement exist before the police department could share information. That's kind of a high level explanation of it. Because that didn't exist, if I were to terminate an officer or discipline an officer and that didn't exist, they win that grievance all day long. And now I'm stuck with a cop that I shouldn't have. Right? And so we got to make sure that stuff is right. Process matters. It really does.
Is that just based on the communication between the police department and the oversight board, or will it also be made public, or what can be made public? Because I think at one time in the previous administration, if not mistaken, there were things posted on a website that people could go. That should not, like, regardless of, like, across the board, it shouldn't happen. Do you think there is things people should be privy of?
So here's what I will tell you. If there's an officer-involved shooting, I've been very clear that I'd be releasing the body cam footage of an officer-involved shooting or an in-custody death. Right? Those are two things that I would – or like the Market Street Park. There was an allegation that my officer kicked the homeless person like a football, right, while sleeping in the park. Stuff like that could be criminal in nature. So an in-custody death, officer-involved shooting, an assault of an unhoused individual – those could be crimes. And so once those are investigated and or cleared from the Commonwealth attorney, those can be, those typically will be made public. But for the most part, internal investigations are not made public. They are protected under FOIA because they are personnel matters. Now, the PCOB executive director, she's a city employee, so she gets to see all of that. And she can sit down with the PCOB, the board, in closed session and relay all that to them, but they can't release it to the public either. Now, they can release a statement, and you can release some things of it, but like names can't be released, stuff like certain details. But there are, again, that's why I see there's so much value in the PCOB. Is that for me to come out and say we held that officer accountable? I can't tell you this or that, because of privacy or personnel matter type stuff. I mean, people are, yeah, chief, that's nice, but whatever, you're a cop, right? But for the executive director or the PCOB to say, hey, we reviewed this and we agree with the chief, or we don't, you know what I mean? And so I think there's a lot of value to that.
So something else, well, thank you for that. But something else that came in as well is your opinion on hotspot policing versus profiling. And that's all the listeners said. So I guess you can interpret that how you want, but they want to know your opinion, I take it, on hotspot policing versus profiling. Yeah, some people think that the license plate readers profile. I don't think we went into that too deeply, Razor, but some people feel like that, okay, if this vehicle is registered to an individual and it could be somebody in their house or their family that may have had a history, then all of a sudden automatically everybody's on watch, just because of your vehicle. So hotspot policing versus profiling.
So first of all, flock that camera, when you run somebody's DMV, it doesn't tell you the race of the person.
Okay.
So there's that. But or when you run a tag, it doesn't say the race of the individual, and flock doesn't go into that. So that's not. And actually, one of the things about flock, it's more objective than subjective. So you're looking for a specific tag, you could punch that tag in as instead of casting a wide net in a community, you know, where you're looking for a specific individual. So,
Mm-hmm.
but
I mean, you're the expert, but Chief, but you know, when you say that, some people are gonna find it very hard to believe.
Of course,
the police isn't going to know from A to Z about who this person is, you know.
I understand. I get it. And scrutiny is good. I have no problem with that. The hotspot policing. So hotspot policing has been around forever. And all that, but basically what that is it's data that shows where crime is occurring around a specific time, what neighborhoods, right? And so what we have been doing now, and if you go back and look at our hotspots, they continue to be, and when I talk about hotspots, I'm talking about part one crime, the most violent crime, shootings and shots fired. They continue to be our most vulnerable communities, right? And they have been for years. And so shame on us if we ignore that. Now, one of the things we do every month, we have a community stat meeting where we sit down and look at data and look at the hot spots. And I ask the question, I want to know that where's the hot spot within that hot spot? Okay. Is it a specific address? Is it specific, what's going on there to make that area continue to be a hot spot? And then we focus on that specific area. When I say focus, a lot of times it's not even enforcement. A lot of times it's like, hey, what's going on? You know, people are calling, complaining about this, that, or whatever. In our community stat meeting, Parks and Rec is there, Public Works is present. And it's because when you look at those areas, it's like, okay, other than police, what can you do as Public Works? I could tell you, 10th and Page is one of our hotspots, okay? My wife and I were walking on a sidewalk yesterday. You can't walk on a damn sidewalk because it's overgrown with weeds. And stuff like that. And so like we need to be, we need to focus on those things as well. You know, I mean, there's other things in a community that can help you have pride in your community. And there, you know what I mean? It's there's a lot that goes into that. So, but the hotspots really tells us we need to put and that's one of the things we've been doing. We have focused our deployment of our resources in the areas we need them the most. And the areas we're asked the most. I can't tell you how many times I'm asked, why can't West Haven have a designated officer there all the time? The mall's got an officer assigned to the mall. I was asked by someone at West Haven, multiple people, why does the mall have an officer, West Haven doesn't? That they want to designate officer. So like these are the conversations that I had. I had a conversation with someone yesterday who lives over on Charlton. That's was one of our other hotspots. They want an office. They want a camera set up right there.
Chief, one of the things I'm noticing that you're saying is that a lot of what you do is reactive to what the community tells you, right? If you had the opportunity to say what you wanted out of this, right? Like instead of you being a servant for the community, but you actually were the man to say what you wanted, what would it be? Like, I mean, the community is listening right now. What is that?
Well, so I think the community expects me to have a servant mentality. Like this isn't the
I understand that, and that's like the purpose of the game. But what do you want?
I want to serve this community.
Okay.
I live in this community. I want it to be safe. I want to be able to sleep at night and not hear gunshots or wake me up.
Okay.
That's what I want. You know, because that happened last week. I want the same thing that anyone else who lives in that community.
Okay.
You know, they want to feel safe. I want, my kids are older. They're kind of grown and flown now. But if I had little kids, I want them to be able to play outside and not have to worry about 5 o'clock ducking into the house because 2 groups are shooting at each other in the middle of the street. That's what I want. Right. So I want the same thing. But I mean, solving those issues are complex, and the police ain't going to do it on our own. But, getting around back to that conversation about defund and all of that. I remember when that conversation started, I was the chief in Warrenton, and we had a Black Lives Matter protest every Saturday. I think they still do down at Ewald Park, down at down by Hayti Street. And so, we have this conversation about defunding, and really all they're asking that movement is, hey, we need more resources in these systems that address the root causes of crime that the police are stuck dealing with. And look, I'm a Catholic, so we don't yell at church, but if I was Baptist, I'd jump up and say amen. Like, yes, heck yeah, please, do you, fix you. Because I can tell you that our cops don't want to have to be mental health workers.
Right.
We don't. But guess what? We're still the call of choice.
Yeah.
We're still the ones that are called time and time again to address these complex issues. And I hire these 21-year-old kids to be cops. I send them to the academy for 6 months, and we expect them to be perfect. And I got to tell you, they're close, but they're not all the time. We don't get it right all the time, But we expect them to get out there. We give them a badge and a gun and this tremendous amount of authority and expect them to solve these complex issues in society each and every day that these systems that these systems should be addressing.
Okay.
Right.
So the conversation around defund the police, let's have it. But we still until they start doing them, we got to do us because we're the ones that are called.
Yeah. So Chief, I want to be respectful of your time. Do you mind sticking around for the last segment with us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I appreciate it. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with the Chief because we have, I appreciate the listening audience as well. There's some couple more comments and questions that we want to get addressed. So if you haven't heard yours asked or mentioned yet, just stay tuned. Tell a friend. IMHO Talk Show. All right, here we go. One more again, right?
One more again.
The bottom of the bottom hour of the show. So we are joined by Chief Kochis, the police chief for the city of Charlottesville. And Chief, once again, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for the transparency in our conversation. And we're coming back, and we still have some listeners that have some questions and comments for you. So so they thank you as well. This is very informative, and I'm sure that they're appreciative of you utilizing this platform.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed. So
thank you.
So we have and a couple issues I think feed into each other. There was a question about officers' input, like when it comes to the magistrates, right? And I guess people, what I'm getting from it is that, like the role that officers play, maybe in like ongoing court proceedings, and the importance that you see, or how involved you want your officers to be in that. And then that connects to the question: how is your relationship with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office? How satisfied are you with prosecution of offenders and the sentences?
Yeah, so I'll start with the last one latter. So Joe Patani and I are very good friends. We talk probably daily, and I think Joe's doing a wonderful job. Probably one of the best Commonwealth attorneys I've ever worked with. So Joe, he's thoughtful, and so he's a true partner. As for the role of our officers in the system, our officers, part of the process, if they charge somebody with a crime, they got to take them forthwith before a magistrate or a judge, swear to probable cause, and go from there. And then obviously they got to go to court and testify. But our officers, mostly our detectives, work really closely with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. So especially in more high-profile cases, they work hand in hand. I mean, either Joe or Nina or one of his assistants. I mean, they're side by side with our detectives working on these cases because it's important, bringing justice to families who have just dealt with something so traumatic. It's not taken lightly by our staff. So yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Let's see here. So before we change gears too much, I feel like a couple of these are things that we sort of addressed, but let's dig a little deeper into it because we can't underestimate the impact, even as you were saying about like what's the root causes of some things that leads people to the criminal justice system. And so when we talk about the infrastructure, the question is, I think this is more around the mental health. And again, how much you think that we should be investing in that as a local government community. Question is, do you think the infrastructure is in place to reduce drug use in our area? Do you believe individuals suffering from addiction deserve treatment? And how is the city currently serving them?
So number one, is the infrastructure in place? That's an easy one. No, it's not.
Okay.
And so there needs to be a lot more work done in that space. And what was the second question? Second piece of that?
Do you believe individuals suffering from addiction deserve treatment, and how is the city currently serving them? So I think that's more about should mental health be criminalized, right? Or
So you got two pieces there, right? You got addiction, which should not be criminalized, and I could tell you just Joe Patani and I are in lockstep on this, and that that if we can get people help, they need to get the help. I mean, we have a drug treatment court in the city of Charlottesville that is excellent. When I worked in Alexandria, I was the narcotics commander, and what we were finding working these cases, people who were overdosing, it's like it was just they continued to do this thing. And I was instrumental in putting together the first drug treatment court in Alexandria. And so there needs to be ways to kind of get people on the right track. But yeah, in Charlottesville, the resources aren't there, and not to the extent they need to be.
Okay, not to the extent. Okay.
But Charles and Chief, how does that play? Because I got kind of confused for a second. Mm-hmm. All right, you said that abuse of drugs shouldn't be criminalized, right?
Right.
So now I guess this is for the court system. Where does the line get drawn from the person who sells drugs but also is on drugs?
Well, so we don't focus on so you see that often, but you're talking about folks who sell small amounts of narcotics to support their own habit.
Right.
And in a case like that, if they're charged, typically they would be offered drug treatment court to kind of get on the right track, and then the case is dismissed. That's not something we really focus on. Our focus is on the mid to upper level drug trafficking organizations, and because what you see with those organizations is they're preying on communities. They're trying to make money. It's all it is. It's about money for them, and then you see firearms involved in some of that as well. So the focus for us is on the mid to upper level drug trafficking organization, those who sell to support their own habit. If they are charged, I could tell you through the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, and I agree with Joe 100%, they need to be steered towards some type of rehabilitative posture. So.
Okay. But how often does that happen? Because I can imagine there's people listening right now that's saying, okay, well, I had an illegal amount of drugs on me, but it's because I'm a user. I have an addiction. Now, the police aren't having that conversation, right, on whether or not that I'm going to arrest this person. I'm not going to take them to a treatment facility. I'm going to put them in jail.
Or street value.
So where's the line there?
Yeah, street value gets you more time, too.
Right. And so even if they are charged, if an officer charges them, if it's if it's cocaine, even if it's a small amount, it's a felony, right? Mm-hmm. So just because you're charged with it doesn't mean that and that's why the process is the way it is, right? You're charged, now it goes to the courts, and then it gets a close look. And if that's the situation you're in, it gets, it could be even null pros. Again, drug court could be an option. Lots of different options that are out there. Unfortunately, other than drug court, and again, I was just on a call the other day, and I didn't know this, that there's the closest inpatient facility for substance abuse is like 60 miles away. That's crazy.
Over in Harrisonburg, right?
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah. Now, how effective do you think that's being right now? What improvements do you see? Because to the incarceration piece, we have a disproportionate amount of our community, of the Black and brown community that gets incarcerated. So I can imagine that the system still isn't fair, right?
It's not fair.
Okay,
I worked in the drug world for a long time. Yeah. I've worked undercover. I've purchased drugs in an undercover capacity. I've worked informants. I've worked in that world for a while, and I'll never forget. There was someone who I was working a case and went to a jury trial. It was for heroin. It was a heroin distribution case, and he had a history. That jury gave him 82 years.
Wow.
That didn't seem right to me. And so, I know I sometimes I catch some heat for my stance on gun crimes. I just think they should be looked at very differently than drug crimes. But I don't know. We got to do better in that space. I think the conversation, at least in Charlottesville, I think we are doing better than most in that space about applying some common sense to those cases. But
Now the gun crime, because I heard you mention that a couple of times. So that's an issue. How do you relate when you're out talking? The officers are out playing basketball in the communities and whatnot. If a person, particularly a teenager, feels unsafe, and they feel like I have to carry, I don't want to hurt anybody, but I have to carry because I feel unsafe. So when I think of that, or when you think of that, but then also being harsh on gun crimes, how do you balance that with if we're not fixing why the person feels unsafe to even carry the gun?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to fix it. I mean, but two wrongs don't make a right, right?
Yeah.
And so, like I said earlier, to me, gun crime is more about the community. So you're holding a gun to try to defend yourself. Someone may be shooting at you. Now you start blasting back. Those bullets don't hit anybody but some innocent kid, or hits a house, or goes in a window and hits somebody.
That's tough.
For me, as a chief of police, I need to keep this community safe. And so if you're picking up a gun, my take on it is, now look, the system's in place. The reason the system is the way it is that I don't sentence anybody. Last thing you want is cops writing laws, right?
Yeah.
And so that goes to the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, and they make those decisions as to not sentencing, but charging and all the other different things.
Yeah,
Hey, Chief, I got. Let me add this last thing. I promise. I'm gonna come.
Yeah, I got like 5 minutes.
This ain't gonna take but one. Me and Charles are both country boys. Where we grew up at, Caucasian people had guns in the back of the windows, and it was fine.
Yeah.
For police officers, would you say that it is a heightened response if they see an African American with a gun as opposed to seeing a Caucasian with a gun?
Man, I'd like to say it's not, but I will tell you that implicit bias is real. We all have them. You have them. I have them. It's something that we have to be very cognizant of. And so that's why we are focusing on our training when it comes to implicit bias. And here's why it's important that we do training as police officers on implicit bias. Because if you act on your implicit bias, right? If you look twice at me because I'm walking through, wherever, and I'm some white kid from Jersey, right? Like, what's he doing here? Something, right? That's an implicit bias.
Right.
But as a cop, if I do that and I take an action or I pull you over, that's a bad day. I mean, that could go very bad. And so we have to recognize that those biases exist, make sure we're not acting on them. And we continue to do that. So I know that ain't a direct answer to your question. I'm not trying to spin it or anything like that. Okay. But that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's it. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Thank you.
So.
Yeah. So, and before we let you go, got to touch on, I think the last big one is like SROs versus YROs.
Well, I listened to your episode about that.
Well, thank you.
Oh,
appreciate it. So what's your stance on that?
Oh, man. Try to get me in trouble today. No, that's all good. SROs. So I think there's value in SROs. I wasn't here when they left. But I also think that it is a conversation that if we're going to have officers back in the schools, the school board has to tell me they want them. And they haven't done that yet. I can tell you that the conversation around SROs, I think, has gotten hyper. I don't want to say political. It's just, I think it's all coming from, no matter where you stand on the issue. I truly believe it's all coming from a good place. Like whether you're against SROs or for SROs, you have your position because you care about our kids. You just think about the issue differently. And so as a cop, I just live in a different world. I was just down in Miami at a Chiefs conference, and the father of a kid who was killed in Parkland was there and was talking about that SRO that was there that went and hid and didn't even respond. And but hearing his stories and stuff. So to me, what I don't want something tragic to happen in a school, and then we start saying, "Oh, now we need cops in the schools." So it's I don't have the spots right now. Like you talk about defunding, like those positions are gone, right? There are models out there that work. I think there's values to having police officers in the schools. I also understand the conversation around school to prison pipeline, but that conversation isn't just around cops in schools. Like suspending someone or expelling someone out on the street. Like what now? What are you going to do with them? I listened to your interview with the former mayor Walker about what happened to CHS. She's 100% right. You can't throw kids out on the street and expect it to solve a problem. Now, I do think Dr. Gurley has done a lot of good work in this space. Night school, that was something he was planning and then just realized, man, I just got to do it. And he did it. Like I said, I live across the street from LMA where his kids go. It just seems like a good vibe. Their kids are out there. So it seems, they're doing something other than just being out on the street. So it's a complex issue.
Yeah.
I'm here to be a partner one way or the other, whether they want them in the schools or not, because they're our kids, and there's nothing more important in this community than our kids. So,
all right. Okay. So Chief, in less than a minute, I'm gonna let you close where you want. Just maybe somebody wants to know: have you implemented anything to help with the kidnapping or / human trafficking?
I saw that pop up.
And then lastly, when you close, let us know just going forward when people feel like they're making concerns about policing, officers that need to be fixed. What's your last and what's your words as you leave to the community on why they should trust you and your leadership? So those two things as we close.
Yep.
Okay. Well, the human trafficking piece, yes, we are doing some work in that space, mostly with the feds because it's a big issue. So we are doing some work in that space within our detective bureau.
Okay.
Trust, man, trust is hard, and we're not there yet. Right. And someone asked me on a show not too long ago, what is the measure of success my first year? Someone trusts us a little bit more. And it's, again, getting back to building relationships and being present. We've got to do that each and every day. And so, get involved with us, man. I'm not afraid to have difficult conversations. Let's have them. You want to do a living room town hall? I'll come to your house. We'll stay in your living room. You can yell at me and we can talk about tough issues. We can have lunch. We can have coffee. Let's have these conversations. I think it's important that I'm accessible, that the police department's accessible. And I'd love to come back on the show, man.
Absolutely.
As well. Like, let's, we can do it. I appreciate you guys. Real talk on this type of stuff. We need to have more of it. I'll be honest with you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Seville Police Chief Michael Kochis, thank you for your time. I know our listeners and definitely appreciated it. And until next time, be safe.
All right. Have a great Sunday, guys.
Thank you.
All right.
IMHO Talk Show.